I recently got a comment on one of my videos which really made me chuckle. It says, sounds like sh-. I think it probably sits somewhere between
Dog Poo
and
I am a golden god!
So let's look at what we can do to remedy the situation. I've got my static mix or my balance done. I'm going to do the most important thing that you can do. I'm going to take a break. Hello and welcome to part 2 of Mixing with an Idiot. We're going to take a voyage through this mix now, try and get it sounding a bit clearer, crisper, more air. And I've got my cheat sheet here. This is courtesy of Craftlin, and if you have a look on the comment section of the previous video, you'll be able to read it in full. There's some really good little tips here, but it boils down to 5 key messages. First one, pan it. 2, thin it. 3, EQ it. 4, reverb it. 5, no compression or minimal compression. Particularly different to the sort of rock and folk type idioms that I normally record in, with a little sprinkling of strings and things. So we're going to use these various techniques to improve, hopefully, on this mix. And we'll see how we get on. I may not do them in exactly the right order. I do feel a little bit like the passenger called to the flight deck of a 737 and trying to fly in with instructions from ground control. But let's head into the mix and see how we get on. Right, so before I do anything else, I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. I'm going to have a look at each section by section, make sure that the sections themselves are working together before I even think about how I'm placing those in the mix and what else I need to do to them. So listening to the brass, I'm a little bit disappointed that the mid brass isn't coming through a little bit more. It is only a supporting harmony or background line anyway, but it's really faint. I played the modulation in, but actually you have to be a bit careful with brass. The modulation doesn't tend to work in the same way as with strings, so what I'm going to have to be a bit more brutal about it. I'm going to scale it down vertically, so I'm retaining the peaks and troughs, but then I can move the whole lot up. So that's scaling down, then moving up, and that gives me, a bit of extra push on the mod wheel. This bit at the beginning needs, sorry, my mouse control, awful. That needs to come up as well. So again, I'll scale it down vertically and then bring it back up. And I'll carry on doing that with any instruments that I feel need it. Right, as I'm going along, I am doing a little bit of rebalancing just so that I'm sure that these are sitting correctly. It's easier for me to reference what's going on if I've got, my level mix correct. So I'm looking at subgroups here, strings. I'm just going to bring down a little bit and bring the brass up, so that I'm keeping all the time. I'm just adjusting and keeping sure that the mix I'm listening to is sitting roughly right where it is. So that's that, and I'm also just checking the groups as I go along, so I would sort of check woodwinds and all of the others, doing the adjustments that I need to do. So kind of referring to my cheat sheet, what I've done with the woodwinds is that we've got this alternate version of the woodwind shorts, which is playing a little line. So it's subtly different to the normal shorts. I'm not sure what else they've put in there, but it is different. And then I've just basically layered a copy from Albion 1 of the normal shorts, not from the legacy version, and I'm panning those 2 across. So they're playing the same line, but it just gives a bit of a texture there. And if I just bring the other woods in, So we've got those low woodwinds as well from Iceni. There in the middle. I'm wondering whether I could take them across a little way as well. And then if we go back and let's have a look at the brass. I've got this mid brass, which is kind of doing the same thing as the low woods, in that it's fulfilling that role of padding things out. And my dog wants their dinner. Myra, you're going to have to wait. Let's have a look at the mid brass low woodwinds, the Iceni low woodwinds. Let's solo those as well. Let's have a listen to what those two are doing. So it's quite an interesting sound. So yeah, woods panned slightly left, and then the brass, mid brass, select that, see what we've got there. And let's pan that right. And then clear down the solos. Feeling happier with these strings now. They have a bit more bite to them than they used to. So I basically had a look at the actual instruments themselves and the mic positions. Spitfire gives you a number of different mic positions that you can use. So with the Iceni, you've got now I'm not sure, I'm assuming these are close mics. They certainly yeah, they sound, they're the close mics. I'm not sure about this because that sounds a long way off, but anyway, the mix of the close and taking the Decca tree down, because the Decca tree is giving us a little bit more of that room ambience, which is nice because, you know, our studio is fantastic, but I want the bite. I think at this point I'm going to need to take a bit of a break. Yeah, I'll see how it sounds when I come back, but my impression at the moment is we're getting well into the mix now. We've had a look at the strings. The strings have got that more bite and punch to them. The brass is working nicely. And with that panning of the brass and the woods, I think that will work quite nicely. And the next thing I really need to resolve is the percussion. The percussion sounds a little bit flaky and woolly to me at the moment. So, yeah, let's see how we get on after the break. Now, number 2 on my cheat sheet was thin it, and that's to do with the actual stereo field. How much of the stereo image are you taking up? You know, if everything is sitting in a reverb, it's all swamping the sound field and nothing is, you know, standing out. And especially with the lead instruments, the low brass probably could get lost. There is a function in Iceni and many of the Spitfire orchestral samples to be able to move the stereo width around. So normally it's set at this sort of mid range. Let's just solo up. So you can widen it right out if you want to. So that's a real stereo wide. You can take it down. Now that's pretty much mono sitting in the middle, but you kind of need that if you're going to actually pan it. So if you're going to shift it over from one side to the other, if it's really wide, the panning's going to be odd because you're still going to have all of that reverb sitting there as well. Now I don't think we need to pan this one, but we do want it in the middle. we probably don't need quite as much stereo width on it. And often these sounds will be weird out of context. They won't sound as good until you put them in the mix. Right, so we're going to leave that a little bit narrowed in. And I'm also thinking it does need a bit of EQ, to be perfectly honest. Let's have a look at what it's doing. Let's take the overall volume down a bit. I'm not happy with that down there. We don't really need that low rumble. That's probably just causing us issues. So we'll put a low cut in there. I can just, where are we? Let's just bring that down a bit. We can choose to have quite a high shelf here, really, because I just really want to knock it out. So that's with the EQ in and with it out. That's fine, because I'm not actually hearing a lot of difference, but that's fine because I'm removing some of that low stuff that I don't need without actually impacting too much on the sound. So that low cut will do okay. That's our fundamental frequency, and sometimes there's a bit of boxiness around there. If I just have a little search, bring that up. It's a little bit of an odd frequency there. Might help it cut through a little bit more without sounding that too boxy. And just a little bit of EQ on the percussion, just to try and give it a bit of bite, taking out a little bit of the boxiness down here. It just seems to allow the fundamental to come through, then a little bit of shimmer up here, and taking out some of the, well, certainly I've got a low cut there at 20 on quite a high shelf, as well as the low. Maybe take a bit more out actually, because we really don't need that down there. It's just creating muddiness. Yeah, I'm quite liking that. Which could be causing a problem. Hello, hound. What are you doing here? Eh? What's all this about? You go for a walk, do you? Dear me. It's not always easy to do this job, is it? Oh my God. Right, so we really are moving along now. We've done a lot of the different things on my cheat sheet. We've panned instruments left and right. We've narrowed the stereo field on some, EQ'd others just to give them a little bit of space acoustically. So sometimes they on their own they actually sound worse, but once they're in the mix, they're giving space to other instruments, particularly in the bass end. We haven't done any actual reverb yet, but what I'm going to do now is just sort of listen back to that louder part of the piece and through to the end and solo in the original mix and just see what we've got. So let's have a quick listen. So this is the main mix. Reference mix. Feels just stuck in the middle. It's the main mix. Definitely feels like it's got more air and space for the instruments to be heard. It's getting there, definitely. To me now, it sounds like the instruments have that air and space to breathe, and that's what you want, rather than that just sort of clustered hogging the middle of the sound field, but with this wash around it, almost sort of drowning in this wash of muddiness. So I've got one effect now on the insert chain of the stereo bus, and it's an EQ. And I'm using an EQ that I don't often use, and with good reason here. I've got one that doesn't have a spectral analyzer in front of me. I wanted to just dial in the EQ that sounded good, so actually just play around with it and listen to the sound rather than my eyes tricking me into thinking that I'm doing the right thing because I can see what frequency is where. So I've taken a little bit of a sort of, again, some boxiness out of the mix at around about 430. I haven't really done anything with the low frequency, but I have run it through a 30 hertz high pass filter as well. And then I've put a little bit up there in that sort of kind of 2.8 zone and a bit more shimmer at the top end just to bring it out. So I'll bypass this and play the actual mix, and then I'll kick it in, and you know, this is all going to be personal taste, but I think it brings something to the party. So bringing it in, and it just brings a little bit more clarity without being too ridiculous. So that's good. I'm happy with that. So what I've decided to do reverb wise is keep it relatively simple. I don't want to mess the mix up at this stage, so I've set up an FX channel. I've got a convolution reverb on there with a reasonable sort of chamber sound, not a huge cavernous space, just a decent sized chamber. So there's not a huge reverb. If I just play a little bit, we'll run forward. So you can hear it's not massive. Now on each of the four the orchestral subgroups, so strings, brass, woods, percussion, I can send varying amounts to that FX channel, so I've got complete control over it. So for instance, if we look at the strings, and we'll just solo those out. If we have a listen, now that's dry, but I can do stupid things with it, but it doesn't need a huge amount to bed it into that space. There's slightly less, I'm putting less on the strings because they are a really good rhythmic thing. I don't want them swamped with reverb. So slightly more on the brass, but not really that you'd notice. It's just in fact most of these really are coming in at roughly the same amount. Let's have a listen to woodwinds. Might actually select the woodwinds and put a little bit more on, because it is almost like they're sitting back a bit more, and then the strings are a bit more in your face and the brass is in the middle. And let's just have a look at the percussion, because the percussion, again, I mean, I don't want to go nuts with the percussion. Let's just make sure it should be just loopy. But equally, if there's not enough, it's going to seem like they're right in your face. So and if we solo up the reverb channel, that's what's coming through the reverb, and that's being sent then to the master. I mean, we can tweak that here as well if we want to. Send as much as we like, but I've set it at that level, and I think we're getting there. I like the fact that in mono now I can hear everything pretty clearly. So that's pretty much it, really. We've definitely made an improvement here. It's one of those things that, you know, is always going to be personal choice, and you can choose different flavors of, and the way you mix it, you can get to the same end point in so many different ways. But what we have ended up is with something that is better than it was at the start, and that was the aim of this exercise. And all of this, just learning the craft, is useful, because the next track will be easier and the next one after that will be easier still. So well done if you actually made it this far. It's been a bit of a journey. Thank you, Craftlin, for setting me that particular delight. I think we've ended up with a track that is nearer to
I'm the king of the world
than it was at the start, so that was the main objective. Is it perfect? Probably not, but it's good to actually practice on something like this, and it will just get better as you do more mixes. It's always worth realizing that you're never finished learning all this stuff. So let's just play it out, and thank you for watching. If you want to like and subscribe, that's up to you, but don't worry, you may not want to sit through this rubbish again. Right, I'll see you on the next one.